SNR735 asked me in my YouTube comments. He says, Spicy, I've been trading gold. That's what XAU is. I've been trading gold for the last 3 years. No results. Blowing accounts as always. Rough, man. I feel you. Trading is really hard. So first off, I just want to give you a lot of respect for saying that, for being able to acknowledge that and say that. That's like the first step that someone has to take to have to be able to say what I'm doing is not working. It's very humbling to say that off the bat, and also have like your name in public to say that. I say that because I recognize how challenging that is. Like I'll quickly rant on this and then I'll actually answer the question. I say this because back in September 2019, I started sharing every single trade that I took on Twitter publicly and transparently, literally every single one. And I would have weeks, or I would go through months where I would go on really nasty lose streaks and go into really nasty drawdowns. And like, sure, when there would be the occasional hater that would come in, and like talk a bit of smack. And in the beginning, that was quite painful. But over time, I got numb to it. But what I didn't expect was when I could tell. Okay, let me explain. So sure, people are going to come in and hate, and that's irritating, but I think like because it's so extreme and because it's so, some of the times it's so ridiculous, it doesn't take that much self-awareness to look at someone flaming you and being like, okay, the reason why they're flaming me, it's not because of me, it's because this guy, he is probably going through an unfortunate time at the moment and he just needs a place to vent. And I get it. It can be satisfying to flame someone. So like I get it. And I pity those who go down that route, but I can understand it. I can understand it because like when I was a kid and I used to play video games, I literally did that all the time too. So like, bro, like I get it. Um, but yeah, what I didn't expect was when I could notice that my follow account would just like slowly start dripping down, or like my engagement would start going down, or people that like I saw people who would like regularly like comment on my stuff and be like, yeah, man, like I respect what you're doing, blah blah blah. Or like, yeah, keep going, keep pushing. Those guys would just drop off like after I post like a monthly review of me just like losing like 20% of my account, and I would go on like a 12x lose streak. Those guys would like drop off. And they didn't flame on me, or they didn't hate on me or anything, but I could just, the way that it made me feel was like, um, maybe these guys just like lost their faith in me and they don't want to be rude, but they just like politely unfollow, and they just politely like just stop interacting with me because they think that my content is basically useless. That's how I felt like in the moment, right? And this was like me being new to social media and me like still being like a sensitive little fairy. But now I don't care, right? Um, but the point is that I respect it. Okay, now let's actually answer the question. So, what would I do? What would I suggest? Well, if you keep doing the same thing that was not driving results, and you keep doing more of it, well, we're just going to get more of no results. So, if we want to change the output of a system, we either have two things that we can do. Okay, so the first thing is we can either change the inputs, so we can change the entry, stop, and target rules, and we can go and like play around with different strategies for gold, or we could change the environment entirely, and we could say, you know what, maybe we don't trade commodities, maybe we trade something else, right? Maybe we trade in a different market. So here's my logic. I actually replied to it in a comment, but I thought to make a video on it as well. So if I had the choice, right? Like, if I still wanted to be exposed to traditional markets, I would rather look for edge in places which are a lot less competitive, like low cap stocks. So these are much less liquid products, which means that there are going to be fewer big players and more small fish to trade against. Because if you're like in a market, right? So let's say this circle represents the entire market. Um, Actually, you know what? There we go. Pro, noob. And then we have another market. So this is market one. This is market two. This one is noob. And this one is pro. Okay. You had to pick between trying to make your P&L go from negative to break even, not even profitable. But if we wanted, imagine our system, the output of a system that we have is currently negative, and we want to bring it from negative to break even. In which market would we rather do it in? Market one, where the distribution of that market is mostly noobs and very few pros, or in the second market, where it's mostly pros and very few noobs. Me personally, I would rather pick the easier market. Now, sure, in the second market, it might be a bigger market and maybe the maximum potential, right, might be like to make $1 billion a year, right? That's like the potential. But in order to hit this potential, you have to be like a top 0.01% trader in order to pull this, right? But in the first market, the maximum potential might be only like to make $1,000. Let's say okay, $10,000 a month. Sorry, $10,000 a year. So barely anything in terms of P&L. But in order to achieve this, you just have to be a top 10% trader. So which one of these is easier to pursue? Of course, this one, right? First, nail this one, then like nail the easier markets and then start going after the bigger ones. So a sport analogy for this is like, imagine that you just started playing tennis, and when you are competing in gold, this is like you applying for like world championship type tournaments, and you just keep getting knocked out in the first round. So it makes sense that you're not winning any prize money. You're paying to apply to these tournaments, but you keep getting knocked out, so your total P&L is negative. But imagine that instead you applied to local tournaments. So not internationally, not even nationally across your country, not even state. You're just doing local. So it's just like your city only, right? So they're not going to be like giant mega professionals applying to this tournament because the prize money for first prize might not be that high, right? But because you're playing against a lot of worse players, the probability that you get knocked out in the first round is a lot lower, and the probability that you get into like the top 3 or the top 4 of the tournament is significantly higher, and that might be the threshold that you need to meet in order to actually start collecting prize money. So you don't have to be first place in a tournament to collect prize money. You could come fourth before you start collecting prize money, right? So let's say you apply to these local tournaments, and now maybe you're hitting 10th, so you're not getting prize money. You keep improving your skill. Now on average, you're getting like 7th. You keep applying, you keep playing the local tournaments, you keep practicing, and now you're getting 4th, and now you're actually starting to make money. Then you keep improving, and now you're consistently getting like 1st or 2nd place. You're nearing the limits, the maximum potential limits of this tournament. And even if you were to get better at the game, you would still hit first place. Like let's say you play 12 tournaments per year, and 11 out of 12 you get first place, and then 1 out of the 12 you hit 2nd place. If this is the distribution of your performance, it would be within your best interest to increase the level of tournament that you're trying to play in, right? Because even if you get better at your level of skill, right, you're not actually going to squeeze more money out of these tournaments. You're still going to hit, like, you could double how good you are at tennis, but you're just going to get first place, what, 12 out of 12 times instead of 1 out of 12 times. So your lift to your P&L might only be like a small little smidgen. But if you go from local to like state tournaments, maybe your max earnings go from $10,000 per year to like 50,000 a year because you're now playing in state tournaments. But now because you're playing in state tournaments, this distribution is um, a little bit skewed more towards the pros. So you're now no longer hitting first place often. You're now hitting you're again coming like fourth or fifth, and you're not winning prize money. So those tournaments basically limit test you to show like what is your level of skill, and then yeah, you improve over time. But yeah, the main point is that the way that I would approach it is to pick the easiest markets first and go hard in those, like work really hard in those easy markets until I've maxed out and until I'm hitting until I believe I'm in like the top 1% of that market. This is actually the logic for why me personally, I am building a crypto personal brand, and I will be starting an education slash mentoring service, because the competition in that and the resources required to run that are a lot smaller and a lot lower than, for example, building my own prop firm or building my own exchange. Like, if I'm going to build my own exchange, I'm going to be competing against Binance, Bybit, and Hyperliquid, which are enormous giants. If I want to go and start my own prop firm, I'm going to be competing against Wintermute, Jane Street, and all of the other top prop firms. Is it doable? Yeah, sure, of course. Of course it is. Absolutely. But it's going to take a lot more effort, and it's going to take a much higher level of skill. But when I'm looking at, okay, well, what is the market for education services? Well, Binance or Wintermute, or like the top traders in the world, they probably don't run education services. They probably just run their own firm. So they're not there. They're not competing in this market. So I'm going to be competing against all the other guys who just have brands. And there's really, like, surprisingly not that many of them. And also, out of the ones that do have a brand, how skilled they are also is surprisingly not that high. There's very few people who are very good at trading and also simultaneously very good at marketing. The crossover between the two is actually very low, which is surprising considering the size of social media arbitrage at the moment. But yeah, it's not very competitive, and that's why I'm going to go really hard in it. And the moment that I hit my constraints with it, like if I'm consistently, literally the best in the space, and it continues to be at that, like I continue to hold that position, and the constraint to my revenue is the total adjustable market, like the literal entire market as a whole, is my constraint, and the only way that I can solve it is like the only way that I can grow, or the highest ROI thing for me to grow, is I have to execute strategies to increase the TAM of the entire market rather than just do something better in my business process. Then and only then would it make sense for me to go and pivot, or to go and start a new business, like, oh, I'm trying to build my own crypto prop firm, or I'm trying to build my own crypto exchange, or something like that, right? So this concept doesn't just apply to which markets am I going to trade, but this also applies to which markets am I going to go and build a business in. And you could even make the argument that building a business and building a trading strategy, there's a lot of overlap between the two, and you could even argue that they are ultimately the same thing. But yeah, I hope that answers the question. I hope the analogy was helpful as well. But yeah, let me know if that was helpful. And by the way, if you're serious about improving as a trader, I'd like to invite you into my free Telegram. Here's what you're going to get inside. You're going to get a 100-page guide on how I trade breakouts. You're also going to get a 214-page guide on how I trade reversals. And by the way, these two guides, I go really, really in depth with the strategies, with the theory, with the logic, and also I include like total combined within these two guides, there's more than 75 trade screenshots for you to study, like through just continuous repetition, and it's going to help you train that pattern recognition of seeing the exact same thing happen over and over again. Also, you're going to get a custom trading journal that I built, which makes it really easy for you to track your trades, but also to review your trades. Like literally in the journal, there's a tab called educational resources. And in there, I have a template for reviewing trade screenshots and guide to show you the process for how to actually review your trade screenshots to improve your performance over time. And also a whole bunch of other stuff as well that I give out for free in my Telegram. So if that sounds interesting, click the link in the description to join.